Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by TechTables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves. Today, we're excited to have Sabra Schneider, Chief Information Officer at the City of Bellevue and Mix President, Megan Clarke, Chief Information Officer for King County, Michelle Jackson, Director of IT at the City of Camas, and Christina Parra, Enterprise Account Manager at SentinelOne. Welcome to the Public Sector Show by TechTables. Sabra, for those who don't know you, give us a quick intro on yourself.
I'm Sabra Schneider. I'm the CIO for the City of Bellevue. I've been in the public sector more than 25 years now, which is amazing. And fun fact, I'll just do one fun fact.
Yeah, please.
I like to cold water swim in Puget Sound year round.
And she's the president of Mix. Is that right?
And I'm the president of Mix. That is correct. Metropolitan Information Exchange, a professional organization of CIOs from counties and cities over 100,000 in population size that's been around since the 60s, believe it or not. Very long-standing organization, yes.
Fantastic. Love it. Megan, for those who don't know you, quick intro.
Megan Clarke. I've been a Chief Information Officer for about 22 years. I started in public. I was for the Grammys, then the Oscars, as well as Stanford University Business School, not the whole thing. And I prefer to be called a big geek. I love being a big geek. And I'm not the president of anything, but as a fun fact, I do improv.
Whoa, that's awesome.
And I tell you, improv is the greatest thing if you want to be a leader and speak in front of groups. Greatest thing ever. That's how I learned how to be in front of people.
Love it. Christina?
My name is Christina Parra. I work for SentinelOne. I'm an account manager serving the public sector focused on the Pacific Northwest. I've been in tech sales 11 years now, and the last 5 years I've been with SentinelOne.
Michelle?
Michelle Jackson. I'm the Information Technology Director for the City of Camas. I have been in the public sector for close to 20 years, and I've had some great opportunities in the last 5 years to refreshing networks and hardening networks and bringing cybersecurity into organizations that didn't have a strong presence. Oh, fun fact about me, I've been kickboxing for over 5 years, and I love it. I do it all the time after work. It's the best stress reliever I've ever gotten into. And I also cold plunge on a regular basis. I don't swim the sound, but if I could, I would. It's very healthy.
Megan, let's kick off with you. During your TEDx talk that we didn't play on the TV screen, but I watched it. So on Being Perfectly Imperfect, you've watched it? Amazing. Love it. You shared a powerful story about how perfectionism shaped your life and career, especially the moment when you realized that failure was not just a system glitch, I love that, but something deeply personal. How did you make that realization that influenced your approach to leadership, and how do you handle that challenge today as a CIO in King County?
Appreciate the question. And you and I had a conversation where I did share, because in the talk, I don't actually say that there wasn't really a glitch. The press release stated, but it wasn't. It was actually one of the most perfect things I've ever built. But it almost makes your question more relevant, because the work that we do, we're constantly under scrutiny and constantly under people saying, you're not doing it right. I read an article, you're not doing this, or I know more than you. And for me, that moment and that experience, which was very hard to move through it, of I know I did my best work. And despite the fact that on a global scale, that's not being shared, that no matter what happens, I have to hold that confidence and that knowing that I know what I know. I am good at what I do. When I don't know something, I bring in the right people, because that's what makes good leaders. And that's why I think today in this world and working as a CIO, we're constantly bombarded by being told people aren't happy with what we're doing. It's the nature of the beast in this job. So for me, the resilience that gave me to do what I do, because I'll acknowledge it, I do think we tend to get a little bit more pushback. We're interrupted more as women, and there's a lot of things that go on. And it allows me, I think, to stand stronger in saying, this is the right thing to do, no matter what. You all might think I'm a horrible person, but I'm doing my job as the CIO, and that's what I'm here to do. and to be of service. And then I try to instill that in my departments, that it's really important to hold that.
I'm curious, I was thinking about this right now. Is there a mentor or a leader growing up that kind of exuded that resilience onto you, or did you learn that somewhere? Like, where did that come from for you?
It was twofold. There were challenges growing up to overcome personally that I think led to my inner resilience that I have. Big fan of Richard Branson. I have been my entire life. His idea of leadership, I think, is really important. But I think I really formulated the resistance in the 90s as a female in IT, because that was back in the day. I was in a major consulting firm, and it was a very different world. And you had to have an incredibly tough skin to make it through every day. So a lot of the resilience I have today is from going through some really awful things. But yeah, I think that's where a lot of the personal comes from, because I can admire and follow anyone, but I had to learn the hard way how important it is to know yourself and to know you're enough no matter what. And again, when you don't know, bring in the right people. But to me, that's good leadership, is to not pretend, oh yeah, I know it, I got it all figured out. And you don't.
I love that. A favorite Richard Branson book, quote?
His autobiography or biography. I can't remember if it was the auto or bio, because he talks about his life, and he's amazing, like charging for mowing lawns when he was 8. He's that visionary. He inspires people. And that's the kind of leader I want to be. And we know, everyone thinks IT is boring. We're in the basements. We're some of the most scintillating people you'll ever meet. But he talks so much about how he inspires people. And a lot of it is bringing fun to the work. And that's what I took from him, was because I'm a nut in the office. I'm like, we have got to have fun. This work is too hard or hard enough. Yeah, but I can't remember if it was his biography or autobiography, but it was great. Just really getting, because he was going to start train. He was going to have an entire train company in the US. And just listening to how he was working through all of that was fascinating.
Yeah, he really dialed in like the visionary component early on, and then just found operators to fill those spots. Sabra, as the hometown CIO for the city of Bellevue.
Woohoo! I love that we're in Bellevue right now.
Yeah. No, I love it.
Sorry to cut you off.
Oh, this is great. No, I love that we're City Hall. How far away is it?
Couple blocks.
Couple blocks.
We could tour it at lunchtime if you want.
We could get a tour. That would be great.
Absolutely.
We toured Seattle City Hall yesterday.
I heard Seattle City Hall is beautiful.
Super. Yeah, so maybe we'll walk over. My wife will be bringing sandwiches over for lunch, and then we can get the hometown tour.
Nice.
And then head back here. Super curious, how have you leveraged your insights to City of Bellevue to drive innovation and resilience within your organization? Especially, I found this, I like the department's motto is PI. Partner, Innovate, Evolve. Tell us more about that.
Sure. So we love Pi, and I've been in Bellevue for about 9 years, and in this role for 7 of those 9. And in my first year, we adopted Pi as part of a strategic planning effort at that time. So it was employee driven, and we wanted something that was easy to remember. And we revisit every couple years to see, is this still what we wanna? And it generally is. And the fun thing about Pi is, of course, we celebrate with all kinds of pies when something great happens, savory and sweet, depending on the moment. So it's a fun way to celebrate. But Partner, Innovate, and Evolve came from the fact that in IT, we don't do anything alone. And I really believe in strong partnerships with our departments, really deeply understanding their business needs, trying to partner with them to innovate. And I'll get to innovate in a minute, but we can't help them innovate unless we really understand where they're trying to go and what their business needs are. We also believe strongly in partnership with the private sector, who has been a tremendous asset to Bellevue. We are so fortunate to sit here in the middle of some of the biggest high-tech companies in the world, who are very generous and gracious with their time and advice and support and help. So we partner in the city and we partner outside of the city. The last piece of partner, although arguably the most important, is that we partner with our community. One of our new deputy city managers, Joseph Todd, and I are kicking off this fall an innovation forum with the community and with the private sector to really try to understand what our community wants in terms of innovation, how we can help our private sector partners position Bellevue as the place you want to be. And I would say this region, we all lift each other up in terms of who we attract. So that partnership is just hugely important to us. Innovation is one of Bellevue as a city's core values. So it's not just in IT, it's one of 6 core values that the city has. And I really believe that in order to serve the public in an area like this, We have to drive innovation in pretty strong ways. We were out pretty early with a generative AI-enabled chatbot about a year ago, and we've been learning with Microsoft as we developed it and as we put it out there. And that's been a fun partnership with the community and with the private sector. And we think a lot about how can we innovate to lift all ships, not just maybe the technology companies, but everyone in the community. So I wrote a grant about a year and a half ago in partnership with a whole host of people in Bellevue to try to get more money for digital equity for affordable housing. We were able to secure about a $500,000 grant in order to do that, to try to help put free connectivity and affordable housing and connect with the right people in order to also help develop skills and help develop people, making sure people have the equipment they need to take advantage of it. So the last piece of pie is Evolve. Early in my career, I taught at South Seattle College. I was tenured faculty, and I taught in the web design and development program. Do y'all remember when we had those? Some of you in the room probably don't. Some of you in the room probably do remember when we had those. But I developed and taught in the web design and development program, and I remember at the time some of the faculty that taught math saying to me, "Oh, it's going to be a tough summer." And I'd say, "Why?" And they would say, "We got a new textbook, so I have to redo all my curriculum. Nothing's in the same chapter anymore." And I was like, "Oh, how often does that happen?" "Every 7 years." And meanwhile, we're redoing our curriculum loosely annually because tech changes that quickly. So in order to serve the residents of Bellevue, we have to evolve our services constantly. And it's really easy to get complacent when things are working well. And we try to make sure that we can't, which is the evolve and pie.
How do you combat when I think about evolve, I love this. So partner, innovate, evolve. On the evolve piece, how do you manage risk is scary? And a lot of time, we talked about this too. A risk is scary. A lot of people will talk about risk, but actually when you comes to do that, it's scary and people default to the status quo a lot of times. How do you keep the city of Bellevue, I'm a high school basketball coach. How do you keep the city of Bellevue pushing the ball up the court?
It's probably one of the hardest things we do. And I feel super fortunate to work in Bellevue. We have a community and a council and a city manager's office that wants to see us push the needle in responsible ways. And all of those things help us a lot because we have the support of the community and we have the support of our city council to do that. I was listening to Megan's TED Talk a while ago and thinking about that when the notes came out for this. And one of the things that I think we could lean into more is failing fast and moving on, because we do evolve our services, we do innovate, and we really don't like to fail, which means we probably don't take as many risks and don't push as hard as we could because of that. So it's a great question. I also really deeply believe in involving people in change and driving a lot of change leadership. So when we make changes to our services, when we do a new strategic plan, when we launch any of those things, we involve our customers and we involve our staff so that they know where we're trying to go. They're a part of the change. They help make it better most of the time. And then we're all hopefully moving forward together.
Yeah, and I was trying to get this done before the timing. It was just too last minute, too short. But I actually did connect with the mayor for the city of Bellevue, and I tried to we were gonna record like a hey, welcome to Bellevue. Make sure you check out these spots and things. She says great things about you, by the way. She really likes you. Yeah, I think she's on vacation or she's somewhere like that. But I don't have an internet connection. That's okay. No worries. Next time, Michelle, one of the trailblazing women in local government. Your leadership is helping to redefine cybersecurity. You provided me with a few decks and notes from your presentations, which were absolutely fantastic. With the proliferation of bad actors, nation-state attacks, what specific strategies and measures do you believe are essential for local governments to implement in order to stay ahead of these threats?
So there are a lot of essential strategies. So I'll just focus on one critical piece that I believe is a gap that needs more attention. MFA and endpoint security is very standard in local government. And as bad actors evolve, we must change our strategies. With machine language and AI, while they help detect and report cyber threats, it's usually after an attack has already presented itself. So it's equally important to focus on the resilience of recovery of your critical services and data. Picture this scenario. You're working in local government and you have a ransomware attack that takes down your critical services. So the focus isn't just on IT responding to the attack, but also restoring critical services like emergency services and making sure that they have access to their critical data and services during the cyber event. So this is where a cyber recovery plan comes into place. It's very important and can take something from a minor threat to a big public safety issue first. So maintaining robust backups that are tested and having a rapid recovery plan are really important, and it has to be practiced by the team. A plan it's great on paper, but until it's practiced in reality, it doesn't really have much weight. And so practicing that plan is really helpful. So while traditional cybersecurity strategies are important, I think that it is really even equally more important to focus on the recovery of that. And that's really more of the strategy that I'm trying to look at is I can buy all of these tools, but they still take people to manage the tools and to respond and react to those tools. So I've really thought about the gaps, and it really is the recovery, right? I've known other partner organizations that have had cyber incidents, and just hearing them speak, it really is about how fast can you recover and get your critical services back online to the public. And so what I'm focusing on at the City of Camas is not just the tools to give us visibility, but how do we recover quickly so our citizens are not negatively impacted?
Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah, and I have a plan on paper, but that doesn't help me heal. I have to actually practice it. And that's really hard for IT, right? Because it takes time and it takes things down. You have to get people to participate. It's not just an IT thing, right? Cyber is everybody thing now.
Yeah. The notes and decks you provided me were really great. I actually feel really bad. The live podcasts are a little difficult because it doesn't do justice to the amount of content we could go. So my offer is if you ever want to come back on the podcast virtually, one-on-one, we can always go much deeper. Thank you, Michelle. I really appreciate that. Christina, before I jump to you, I got to plug my own content. You okay with that?
Sure.
With that, okay. So talk about one-on-one. I had a 3-hour interview with Morgan Wright. He's the chief security advisor for SentinelOne, but he also has his own crime podcast. And so you got 2 podcasters together and oh my goodness. Yeah. So we went 3 hours and that's after it was edited. And so a lot of the concept we talk about is going left of boom, right? Getting out before the attack, making sure, of course, it can happen. You want to do as much as you can before that happens. Christina, in 2022, you gave a talk at your alma mater, the University of Oregon. Go Ducks.
Go Ducks.
I don't think my wife's here.
I don't know if the Washington people here appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cut it across the river.
That's been perfect. Perfect.
My wife went to Stanford, so she's like, go Tree. I'm like, Tree? Go Tree. I like the Ducks, pretty cute. And I was a huge Marcus Mariota fan when he was leading Oregon Ducks, that no huddle offense.
Very likable guy.
Yeah, super likable. Yeah. Bummed about his NFL career, had high hopes, but.
Can I just say undergrad Santa Cruz? Does anything beat the banana slug?
That's a pretty good one. That's a pretty good one.
Uh-huh.
You gave a talk, actually apropos, why diversity in cybersecurity matters. Walk us through what motivated you to give that talk in 2022 and what key points would you highlight in 2024 if you were going to give it again?
The University of Oregon, for the last, I think Jose Dominguez, CISO at University of Oregon, has been hosting a summit every October. And we've been able to partner as a sponsor. And so I got to a few years ago speak on diversity and why it matters in cybersecurity. And so what was unique about that speaking engagement is that when I spent my time at the University of Oregon, I, as a first generation Latina, spent lots of time with my advisor going through the majors game. I didn't have anybody in my circle who'd attended college. So when she'd say, you got to pick a major, what's it going to be? And I was like, I don't know. What job will that get me if I do that? And we literally would go back and forth. Okay, if I do that one, what job is it going to get me? And never did this job come up. Never did cybersecurity sales come up. So that's ironic, right? So as I've evolved through my tech sales career, I am most commonly either the only woman in the room or the only person of color in the room. And when I spent time doing research for that talk a few years ago, I realized that it's way beyond just my bubble. Those numbers are real and they're global numbers. And then I got to think more about why does that matter, right? Selfishly for me as a woman of color, representation matters to me. I am humbled by these type of opportunities to be able to show that women and women of color can hold these type of spaces and have these type of careers. But beyond that, why in cyber should we care about diversity? And as we know, threat actors, guess what? They're not just white guys from America. They're from everywhere, right? And so in order for us as a defense line to be able to keep up and keep our people, our infrastructures, our cities, our government safe, we need to diversify the people in those roles. And so, again, those numbers when it comes to women and people of color, the underrepresented groups in cyber, they're lacking. And so that was really my passion of why I wanted to do the talk was selfish representation. But as I got into the research, it was really eye-opening that it's beyond just my bubble and why it matters, right? As a real life emergency. What's a little sad is that as I looked at those numbers again for today, not a lot of that has changed yet. And so why it's important for us, and one of the last things I'll touch on, the pipeline gap. So the pipeline gap is a term to specifically focus on the lack of diversity in tech. And so today there are over 750 job openings in cyber in the United States. And so while we need to fill those jobs, we also as an industry need to do a better job of reaching across the aisle and finding diverse people to fill those roles so that we can move forward as an industry and be able to be successful there.
Love that. Megan, when we first met, we talked about these two concepts that I love as an entrepreneur. One is the willingness to fail, which, by the way, y'all are here, but this is number 10, right? So no one showed up to the first one, but 10 people, right? And we just kept going and going. And I got a lot of stuff where you hear in the beginning, why do you record this podcast? No one listens. Well, guess what? Yeah, first episode, no one listened. 0. Now traffic's like more than 100,000 hits on the website. Willingness to fail, I would say also keep going. But I love the taking risks, right? So I'd love to unpack these ideas with you. So first, what does the willingness to fail mean to you? And how does that influence the vision that you have for King County?
I'm thinking back to a conversation that I had with Sabra about how is it that you can innovate because of some of the challenges that we face in government. I think most importantly, the willingness to fail is to be able to realize when you've made a bad choice, decision, or something has gone wrong. Because I think for a lot of years, there was a lot of obfuscation in cyber, and not cyber, but IT in general. And as we become more transparent in all of the things that we need to do to be trusted, to be really good at what we do, it is the willingness to try something within reason, because we are spending taxpayer dollars. I acknowledge every day, I have to be absolutely responsible for how I'm spending. But you have to be willing to fail because you have to be willing to try something. You don't get innovation if you don't try. I think you also don't grow as an individual and as a team and as a department if you don't try something different, which is honestly how some of the best things happen with technology. As left-brained as it is, there's so much creativity and artistry in tech. And so to me, being willing to fail and know you are okay for failing, and in many ways, you're better for it, it's really important to me to build that in my teams, but also with the parameters, because it is scary because especially in government, you make a mistake and you hear about it and you potentially are called in front of a council or someone. So it's tempered with the reality in which we live.
How do you disconnect that from like your identity?
Oh boy, that's a 4-hour podcast.
After edits.
Yeah, and how do you separate the willingness to fail or failing from? It's emotional maturity, if nothing else. We too often, and the biggest challenges I see in environments right now, and especially in tech, is that just asking a question becomes an affront to someone. What you're really trying to say is, I didn't know what I did. I failed. I made a mistake. And so part of it is being able to give and receive questions in a way that's, I'm just being curious. Because right now, I don't think a lot of people are doing that. They're getting a question and they're off because the interpretation is you're saying I did something wrong. And then we might receive it and say, they're saying I did something wrong. Oh, and really deep down, I really don't think I'm a worthwhile and I'm an imposter syndrome. And it hits that way. So it's really having that maturity of, again, I know how to do what I'm doing. I am going to fail. It will make me better. And if I acknowledge it and not hide it, it makes everyone better. But it's that strength of knowing who you are, because you have to separate it, or else I don't think you could do this work. Because I do believe in tech, and my non-tech friends hate it when I say this, I do think it is one of the, if not the hardest job to have, because of the expectations. Whoever carries a phone thinks, I know tech and I can tell you that should have been done in 3 months.
Right.
And you put up with that every day. You have to know, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's really good. It also brings up the 6-hour podcast, which is culture, right? You can't get the team to buy in to the culture of asking questions, being curious. If the culture is everyone's defensive, they think they're being judged, that's just a shipwreck waiting to happen.
Yeah.
You won't get anywhere, right? So that's a 6-hour podcast. We'll leave that. We'll leave that one.
It's a good one.
You want to come back on for the 6-hour?
Oh,
Yeah.
heck yeah.
I love it. Yeah, no, let's do it. Sabra, I got a few questions. These are actually from Rob Lloyd,
Awesome.
which you know because I already told you that. But yeah, this is great. So Rob asked.
Go, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob. Where do you focus the best time to build the pipeline for women in technology and cybersecurity leaders?
Yeah, great question. And wanted to just keep talking with you during your remarks, because you touched on this too, of how do you create that pipeline? This is a random aside,
Yeah.
but I feel like I want it on the podcast. One of Bellevue as a city's mottos is "We welcome the world," and diversity is a really important. It's one of our core values in Bellevue too. And one of the things that really matters to me as I'm going around the world and going to conferences and going to events, I look for the booth with women or people of color, and those are the folks I talk to. That is a deliberate choice, because it is often a sea of not much diversity. And it's not that other companies don't have value to add, they absolutely do. But I want to make a point to encourage that when I'm going around the world. So I absolutely love what you said about those pipelines start early. I remember when I was in high school, Houston, Texas, suburb of Houston, Texas. And my senior year, I was taking honors physics 2, honors chem 2, and calculus 2. And at the time, I wanted to be a chemical engineer, right? And I went to my guidance counselor. This was a long time ago because I'm old. But I went to my guidance counselor and I said, I want to be a chemical engineer, and this is what I'm studying, and this is what I'm planning for my senior year. And she said, oh, honey, you don't need to work that hard to get your MRS.
Hey, geez.
And I thought, this is where it starts. This is absolutely where it starts. And I went home and told my parents I'm never meeting with her again. She's got nothing to offer me. But to your point, we have to start early. And I think one of the responsibilities that we all have in this room, not just the 4 women that are sitting here, but one of the responsibilities that we all have in this room is making sure these are viable pathways to young people, to our kids, to people we mentor, to get out there and give talks like that you talked about earlier. So we have that strong representation. I would say more immediately, some things we try to do in the department, and the IT department in Bellevue is about 40% women and about 35% people of color. Those numbers could be better. They don't yet represent the community we serve. But what we try to do in our own department, we do a lot of learning and education around these things, around communication. We do a lot of training. I myself really think about how are we growing those next generation of leaders across the spectrum of people that are high potential, and how are we making these careers really visible and obvious. And there's a million different strategies for that I think are probably pretty well known now. I'm not saying things like rock star in your job descriptions, and just these things that tend to not attract women, but tend to attract this sort of one demographic that's a big ego kind of player, really valuing the contributions that people make across the spectrum, as not asking the only woman in the room to take notes or to assume she's going to build the PowerPoint every time. I think there's a lot of strategies.
Yeah, you nailed it. That's really good. So what does an ally to a woman in leadership look like?
Sure. I'm happy to answer that question. I'm sure everyone in the room has heard about the invisible housekeeping that happens. We are always the ones, or almost always the ones, to plan culture events. So somebody brings in a lunch, somebody decides to bring in cookies, somebody decides to celebrate a birthday. So lovely that you're doing that for Rob. But it is usually a woman planning that. If there's a retirement party, it is usually a woman planning that. And it isn't always a female administrative assistant planning it. It's any woman in the universe, because we know how to plan a party. It just is. And it's actually a lot of work to plan a party. And it is not work.
Oh, there's my wife back there. She
Yep.
knows. Yeah, she knows.
She knows.
Love you, Betty.
It is not work that gets you promoted. It is not work that gets you recognized. It is absolutely work that builds a culture of trust and fun. I think you were the one who said we have to have fun at work. It brings people together, but it is not something that is promotable. One of the things that I think we all need to do is share that workload and look for it. Look for the woman in the room who's planning all the parties or bringing all the cookies, or there's usually 5 of them and they trade off. Depending on how big your organization is, it's always the same 5. That is a small thing. Another thing I would say would be mentorship. Really think about what the female high potential folks are doing around your table. Give them visibility, give them stretch assignments, understand how they want to grow and help them do it. And last but not least, which is part of mentorship, I think honesty. We all probably go to a ton of technology conferences where the part that is targeted at women is always about building your brand. I'm not exactly sure why that is, because I don't think a bunch of men get together in a room and the first thing they want to talk about is building their brand. I may be wrong about that, but it's always the same thing. And I think, like, why aren't we respected for our technical knowledge? Why aren't we on a panel talking about that? I think there's a lot of opportunity. I also think most men are allies. Honestly, I think most men are allies and they want to be better allies. And so figuring out how to gracefully and probably one-on-one have those conversations with them is a really positive thing to do. And for men in the room who aren't already doing that, like anything diversity, read about it. It's not hard to Google how to support women in your company and how to support people of color in your company, because I think the same things apply.
Yeah. And I think just hearing I love that you said one-on-one, it's great. Like just hearing people's stories and how you can learn more about how those other people connect with the world, where they come from, is super. I do this with the high school kids on the basketball team. You got 12 kids, they all come from different backgrounds. And that's how you get the team moving from the X's and O's to actually buying in as a team, is they start to believe in each other, buy in. It's the same thing in IT. I tell it to adults all the time. It's the same thing. You try and get the team to buy in, and a lot of those conversations happen, quote, off the mic, right?
The thing that for me, and again, I can only really speak from my own experience, but I also feel that we are dealing with such endemic problems that also in having the conversations, we have to be willing to have the really courageous ones. The thing that I still find challenging is in the role I'm in, I have moments where it's like, would they be talking to me like this if I were a man? Would this even be happening if I were a man? And the worst thing about that is you can't check that out. Right now, you can't. Or would you say that to me if I was a man? Then suddenly you're a bra-burning feminist. And both sides have to meet each other equally for that to be, that's a meaningful conversation to have, because there's a lot of bias out there that's completely unconscious. I have always felt, I'm not going to fault someone for having unconscious bias, but what I'm going to fault you for is not showing up and being open to what might change that. And my experience is to really do this, it's for both sides to show up. And for the endemic issues, these have to be discussed at an enterprise level. And that's what I don't see happening in a lot of companies across. But that, to me, that's part of, you build allies by equally showing up. And again, being kind. And I always tell my people, my department, be kind, be respectful, be problem solving. And that's how we move through this, because it sucks when I have those moments, because it's a lonely feeling. And I wish I've been in more situations where I could say, this is what I'm thinking. Can I check that out with you? What's your thought? Is that what you would, if I were a man, would you? Because it's a legitimate question. But the minute you ask it, people can't receive it. And so for me, in allyship, it's courageous conversations must continue to happen.
Love that.
I think pointing out women conferences and brand. Wow, I never thought about that. That's so true. I guess something I'd add, just in addition to everything that's already been said, is that the ally piece is important. Personal experience, again, being the first and the only, right, in my circle. I'd like to think of myself as a pretty confident woman, but in this role, sometimes I might not be. And I've been pretty privileged with my time at SentinelOne to have really good leaders who support me. But I joke that if I didn't have my husband who pushes me and says, no, you deserve more. You work so hard. And I'm like, no, but it's great. I'm happy. And he's the one that pushes me. And I joke about that, right? If I didn't have a husband, I'd probably just be complacent and think that it's enough because all of this is new for me, for my family. And it's this unattainable thing, right? So I think I'm good. It's good. But the male allies, and again, he sees the work and he pushes me. And I'm like, man, sometimes I wish I was a man and had all this confidence to just say, no, I deserve that and ask for more. So to the point of having allies to push us and to recognize the work that we do and say, and he'll say, I bet you the guys on your team are getting paid this or doing that. And I'm like, maybe. And I'm like, but I'm newer. And I'll just personally, I'm always my worst critic, right? Like, I think, and I think that's one of the things about women. We want to be perfect and we want to do everything right before we feel like we're worthy of the next thing.
You don't have the born with confidence gene.
Exactly.
It's just different. For me, my experience is very similar, but also different. The note taking super resonated with me. I almost flipped a lid because just recently, when I was in system administration and analyst and application support person, I go to each of the meetings, and every time I would take notes. I'm a note taker, so I take notes. And I didn't know. People would say, hey, can you send me your notes? Can you send me your notes? Eventually down the road, I caught on because I like to trust that everything's good intentions. I just became the de facto note taker. Even when I became their boss, I was still the de facto note taker until I called attention to it because I got mad, right? I was like, this is so dumb. Why am I always taking notes? Like, they know how to type. They do it all day, right? So I think that we let ourselves get put in that position. And I think it's just culturally, it's just embedded in the culture. And I think most men don't have the intention of not being your ally. This is what I've recognized. And so I will have those conversations and bring them to the side and say, hey, that conversation was very sexist. And let me explain to you why, because I don't think that was your intent. Why do I have to be more educated? Why do I have to be the loudest person in the room? Why is it the case that when I come up with a solution, because I have a highly technical background, that it's not heard? And time again, a male will say the same thing. And it's like all of a sudden it's this epiphany. And as women being nurtured and compassionate, we always are introspective. Not always. We likely are introspective, looking at ourselves. What did I do? Did I say something? Is there room for improvement? Instead of really recognizing that it's not a me issue. I'm playing into it, right? So there are certain behaviors I think as women we can change too, right? I don't need to play dumb. I do it. Why? I don't know, because I don't know how to handle, like, I already know about that. I don't need you to tell me how infrastructure works. I've been doing it for 20 years, right? I built 2 infrastructures, right? That's part of my history. But I don't want to seem like a know-it-all because those are kind of characteristics that bother me, right? So I don't want to mirror it, right? So I'm extra just introspective about those things. So I do agree that we need allies. I just don't think that it's intentional. I don't think men really realize that's what's happening and that we're having this internal struggle and how hard it was for us even to get there in the first place. And for me, it was a long road to even get there because I'm also a goofy person who likes to be silly and have fun, and that can be mistaken for weakness or not being educated, and it's just not. I'm an authentic person, and I am who I am, and I'm not going to change that.
Yeah, I love that. And going through your slides and decks, you are a very technical person. So
I am very I try not to be, but I love it. I'm so passionate about technology, to my core. So
yeah, I think it's just like this awareness, right? There's IQ and then there's EQ. And then I think a lot of times, there's men and women, but there's just this emotional intelligence that's just sometimes missing where there's not that awareness of where you're at, or so. No, it's really good. So Rob wanted me to ask everyone in the room, and you're not mic'd up, but I guess we'll do the honor system. Did you even know he wanted me to ask this?
I don't know.
No. Oh, okay.
I'll tell you after you ask it.
Spicy. So yeah. So Rob said he wants to hear the leaders in the room committing to advancing the diversity of women leaders. I don't know how you're going to respond to this, but I'm just going to say right now real quick.
You have to sign an oath.
Yeah, sign an
pull out
oath
the paper.
right now on the way out here to sign this document that you were here.
You got mine.
I don't know how to, I'm sorry, Rob, I don't know how to measure it or how to check in. Yeah.
Do you promise?
Yeah.
One way might be to ask that question when you have other panels later today
That's a good one.
and people are mic'd up.
Oh.
Then they have
Going on the fly.
They have a little time to think about it.
Then it'll
so-
be on the internet forever.
And then it'll be on the internet forever. That's right.
Yeah, 100%. So, Michelle, how do you see the role of continuous employee education and cybersecurity training evolving, especially in the context of the human element being such a significant factor in operations?
I don't think anybody has the one solution because we all recognize that our end users are our most vulnerable piece in the chain of command, so to speak. I was recently just talking to the mayor about this, about how we need to up our strategy to more than just sending out annual trainings through the product that we're probably all leveraging to do that. And I talked about like how when I worked for 911, we would have these tabletop exercises. And I really see a cyber incident equal to a catastrophic event, a mudslide or what have you, right? Earthquake, what have you. And so I'm like, I think that it's really important that maybe we shift this a little bit and we do a couple things. We do more micro training. So we have smaller, quicker trainings that's easy for your end users to consume and doesn't take a lot of time. More focused training towards each department, because what finance deals with is not the same as buyer, right? They're just not the same, right? They're going to have different phishing attempts and that kind of thing. And so focusing the training and then really having those tabletop exercises. We practice real live restoring from backups. What is everybody's role, like an incident command? And then my favorite, because as I said, I'm a talker, is the storytelling. So I always take any opportunity when an employee asks me a question to educate them and give them real life scenarios. So I took a finance gal to the WCIA insurance security audit presentation. It's before you fill out your insurance for ransomware and all of that. And she'd never been to one. And at the very end, she sends me a chat. She's, now I'm worried about everything. And I was like, yeah, nothing like a cyber event to really bump up that anxiety. And I'm like, but that's important, right? She was engaged in bringing them in, right? Like I said, it's not an IT thing. This is an everybody thing, and it takes everybody. And if you ask a sysadmin or a security personnel, they'll tell you the best, most secure environment includes no people, right? It includes nobody. We all know that's not the reality of it, right? So those are the approaches that I'm working on and breaking it into chunks and really just embedding it in the culture. It has to be a culture thing, period.
Yeah, full stop. Christina, let's wrap up with you. You've kind of touched on SentinelOne's strong commitment to diversity and inclusion. Walk us through how S1 is cultivating this culture and why you believe it's one of the best places to work. You've been there, what, 5+ years, 6 years?
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah. I've been fortunate in my career to work for 3 great companies. I worked at Symantec, Veritas, and SentinelOne. All of them great in their own way. And I know I sound biased because I work here right now, but truly, right? I was talking with Will yesterday. We have a chief people officer at SentinelOne. And I remember when she was hired, I was like, chief people officer? What's that? You know, I've never been at a company that had a chief people officer. And so Divya has done a great job of focusing efforts on diverse inclusion. We have an entire DE&I group within SentinelOne. So in 2022, when I gave that talk at U of O, our first inclusion network at SentinelOne was out. And that month, for Hispanic Heritage Month, I was able to co-found Latinos at SentinelOne. And so at that time, 2 years ago, we had 2 inclusion networks. I did an awful job of checking how many we have today, but we have so many. And that's just one of the aspects of showing that we care about you, where you come from, and providing a space, right? Another piece is family leave. SentinelOne gives their employees 16 weeks of 100% paid, moms or dads, no matter how you have become a parent, and even grandparents get it. So I got to take advantage of that. I just came back to work last month, and to be able to take time with my son and not worry about the finance piece and know that my job was going to be secure, not to mention my boss covering for me and like my job, like not missing a step while I was out. I can't imagine, right? I was raised by a single mom or just other people who don't have, you hear stories all the time of, yeah, my baby was a month old, I had to go back to work. So that I think is just in itself a huge piece. So another piece to go back to the pipeline gap, our internship programs. We have a pretty large office in Eugene, which is actually where I started. And we have a very robust now internship program. Again, 2 years ago was new. And with the University of Oregon, for example, back to that summit in October, I remember last year meeting a gentleman who was interning at the University of Oregon, moved over, started interning for us, and is a pre-sales engineer today. There's another gentleman who he went more just out of graduating from U of O, started working for us as a support agent. And Jose and I, we joke about, you're taking all of my people.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm like, I know, but as we talk about the pipeline gap and like, how do we bridge that? That's how we can be partners in doing things like coming into the K through 12s and talking about Cyber 101, right? For October Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we also built an entire Cybersecurity 101 where parents, you could take it into your different schools and just have a talk. And there's a lot of that community work that really resonates with me. It really just makes you feel seen. The last thing I'll say, during the pandemic and during the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that was happening was the first time that SentinelOne launched mental health days. And again, it's like unlimited PTO. It's like all these amazing benefits at the company, right? You're in sales, you don't really have unlimited PTO. You could take it if you wanted. But
I have unlimited PTO.
do you?
I'm kidding. I'm totally-
It's also a place that like any holiday that is in the calendar, SentinelOne is closed that day. And then we added mental health days. So now we get those twice a year. So just things like that. And I remember being in the middle of it during the pandemic and all the craziness that was happening and being like, wow, they get it. They get that things are crazy. And work is work, and we work in cyber and things are busy. The pandemic was so busy. But we get that like real life things are happening and people need to take a day. And so just a few kind of high level things of why I love that place.
Can I do real quick add
Yeah,
one
yeah.
thing to what she said?
Yeah.
Which I love that you mentioned the K through 12.
Yes.
Because when you look at the research, we lose most women when they're girls from 12 to 17. It shows it goes from about 65% down to 14. And that's why we've got to stay involved, all of us, however we identify, with those programs that are supporting those girls. Because we don't have people for internships. Because I started working on the college age and realized it's much earlier those interventions need to happen. So until that changes, that pipeline won't grow. But just, I love that you brought that up because that's so important.
Yeah.
We've got to focus on that.
Fantastic. Thank you for coming on the Public Sector Show by TechTables.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by TechTables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts, hit that follow button, and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves.